so that it won't
Alrighty, what is up YouTube? We are back at it again with another deck profile for you today. In light of Salvation, the new set that just recently dropped. It's been a sneak preview weekend, so I've already completed the new Link Joker Brandt deck. As you can see, we have the mat here to go along with the theme of today's deck profile. And yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and talk to you guys a little bit about my build on Brandt and my thoughts about it. So before we begin, obviously you know how we do it here. We go have the deck profile, and then at the end we're going to show you some other tech cards or cards you could try in, incorporate, you know, your own kind of playstyle. But whatever the case is, we're going to jump right into it, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So obviously we start off with our starter, the new Star Hulk Lordly. Now we have three different sets of starters. There's a reason why we run this one. We'll jump into it later in the video, but we run this Star Hulk starter for today's deck profile. So that one. We jump into our threes first. So the new one that just dropped right now is the new Wandering Star Hulk Ruler Brandt. Really interesting card. It's a new mechanic that they have, and they reverse triggers. So basically what it is Counter Blast to 1, Soul Blast to 1, and until the end of your turn your opponent's trigger effects they have the power, but their triggers are reversed. By that I mean, if they reveal a critical trigger in their damage or drive checks, instead of it dealing 1 damage to you or 2 damage, because a critical is 2 damage, it will deal 0 damage to you because it minuses the crit from their Vanguard. And if they hit a heal trigger, they deal themselves the damage. So essentially this card basically says, hey, you try to sack me for a heal, you're dealing yourself a damage. Or hey, I know you're a psychic player who sacks crits or stacks their deck whatever way possible. This card basically says, hey, I -1 damage from your Vanguard attack to me. No, you still get the power, so you still, at this point now, you're just playing the game in which they play off of their triggers and powers. So there's a lot of ways around this deck already. It's really gimmicky, so that's essentially the thing about it. They can't miracle heal on you, so that's the really cool part about it. But Brandt, I run 4 of it in this variant. Now I'm gonna go into the next one. Is now the grade 4 of the deck, the new VR Wandering Star Hulk Deity Brandt Ringer. Now, this is exactly like the grade 3, but this one reverses all the triggers or changes its effect. So same thing as this, until the end of their opponent's turn, their trigger still gets the power, but instead of the crit, obviously -1 from their Vanguard, the heal, they'll deal themselves the damage. Now the draw, if they reveal a draw trigger, they discard the card instead of drawing a card. And finally the front trigger, instead of the front row getting the power, it'll be the back row. So essentially when you're swinging at them, if they XL matchups, for example, they essentially would want to, you know, run fronts now, because obviously the crits, you know, if they hit a crit, they won't deal damage to you, so they want essentially run more crits and draws, or not crits and draws, more fronts and draws. They still get reversed in some way, shape, or form. So this card isn't totally bad. You could easily run this at 4 if you'd like, for the more Brandt oriented decks. But this one, I did a little bit of tuning and some other tech cards to it, so I only ran 3, so I don't want to get clogged by it. So 4 and 3 is totally fine. You should just ride Brandt until you see this, and then you just kind of sit on this, because it's 1 Counter Blast instead of Counter Blast and Soul Blast, so it's really cheap of a cost. And to reverse your triggers, it's really, really strong. And my tech of the deck, instead of the grade 3 I can show you at the end, I do run 2 Gradles. Reason being, people don't expect it. They expect to just be reverse triggered all day, and that's totally fine. But then when you drop this on them, it gets a crit, and they're just like, they're at 0. And you know, it's still the same kind of gameplay Deleters had, where you're just pushing them hella hard to that point where if they get to 4 or 5 damage, after you just rewrite into write into another 3, the Brandt, or finish them off with the, you know, the Ringer, so they can't heal out of it. But essentially the leaders was the aggressive part of the deck, and now the Brandts are the defensive portions. So you could see how I'm trying to like tune it out, or tune it to where it's like a more defensive aspect now. But yeah, at the end I'll show you the other grade 3 where you can run instead, but I do 2 Gradles because it's cool to delete them and put more pressure on them. So like I said, you want to get them to 4 or 5 so they can't start healing on you, because once you go into Bringers or the Brandts, they can't heal anymore. It's pretty hilarious actually. Now is the 2s. I chose a more defensive oriented deck, like I said, so I'm doing 3 of the 10k vanillas shields, just for more defense. You tune that out easily. 4 of the new grade 2 triple R, the white outer Vec. This card's kind of interesting because it encourages bad guarding. So basically what it is at the end of the battle that it attacked the Vanguard, if they did not guard the trigger unit, you counterblast 1, you draw a card for free, and you can just bind a grade 2 or greater. So you have more board control. You didn't lose that, which is really good. And on top of that, say you just don't put a marker on it, you just 10 to their 13 or 12 or whatever, and they're forced to guard with the trigger. And if they don't, you bind a card from them. And essentially most of the time, you know, board control is really important, especially since Kagero's out. You know how they have like the grade 2, what's it called, I forgot what it's called, the one they bring out with the grade. But whatever the case is, this card basically says, hey, if you don't guard with a trigger, I could start binding your 2s, and or you force them to like intercept awkwardly, and you know, just encourage bad guarding. So that's why reason I like running it at 4, so you could encourage bad guarding, and like, you know, it makes it easier in your life if they have less guard in the future. So I don't know, I ran 4 of that, it's pretty good. And finally 4 of the new Starhawk Let Luke. So basically what this card does is when your Vanguard drive checks reveal a Starhawk unit, this unit gets 10k, so it's a beater on its own. It gets to like 20-30k essentially, which is really good. And on top of that, the reason why we run it is when it intercepts, it gives you the ability to check their top deck and then manipulate it. It's like reverse OTT is a good way of putting it. Essentially only works if you're on a Brandt unit, but really what it does, like I said, it just manipulates their top deck, so it's really, really strong. Now we just go into the grade 1s. We run 4 of the Starhawk Chichiro. Also fodder power for this, but essentially what it does is counterblast 1 when it's placed. Look at top 4. You just add a grade 2 or greater Brandt, but the rest goes to the drop. So it helps filter a little bit, so that's cool. But the offside is that you do discard the rest to the drop. So I wouldn't. It's okay. It's totally up to you. I do 4 of it. It searches your deck. It filters a little bit, so that's why I like it. I do only do 3 of this one, the Jucurus, again because of grade 2 fodder name. And on top of that, this is the reason why we run this starter, is because its second effect is when you Soul Blast this out, you could check their top deck and act phase. So essentially you only need it once to do, or you only do it once, unless you do some awkward thing where you run more starters, but I don't know how you would soul charge it. But essentially it's only one of that you do its secondary effect to manipulate their top deck. But on top of that, when you guard with this and the tech does not hit, you could call it out for free. So that's like a free booster or something. It's always good. I mean, this is one of those cards that you can also bump up to 4 also. I see a lot of builds doing 4 and 4. It's totally up to you. So I do only 3 of this one though, because you only need to do its effect once. And I do 2 of the Jet Shaft. I like this card a lot. It's really hilarious because you make them intercept as much as possible. So what that says, when it boosts Soul Blast 1, and say you're playing against XL, and they just have like crap ton of 2s because that's what they usually do to attack you with. Oh, board wipe their 2s. Sweet. Intercept as much as possible. So I run this card. It's really good. You could bump this up to 2 or 3. I essentially recommend it with a lot of XL running on right now, so go ahead and try that out if you'd like. And finally, I do 4 of the, it's a big long name, the Treasure Child of Nuclear Magnetic Resonance. So basically what it does, it's like the grade 2, encourages bad guarding. So at the end of the battle that it boosted, if your opponent did not call trigger units for this battle, you shove it into the soul, give one of your other units plus 10k. So essentially what you like to do with this card is tell them, hey, force a trigger out of their hand for this attack, and if they don't, then oh sweet, you know, you put it into the soul, you give another unit plus 10. You don't really have, you want to push them as much as you want, or you can, to at least 4 or 5, because once you hit those triggers, they can't. They're pushing that position. They hit a heal. They have to play bad and force them out, like force them to either siphon through their deck and call out those triggers. So those, for example, those heal triggers, so they don't deal damage to themselves, or force them to, you know, start guarding hecka awkwardly so they don't hit it. So that's why this deck is really gimmicky, as you can see already. They're hurting themselves. So like, essentially they might want to like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, run really awkward triggers. I was even talking to some of the group, and they're like, oh, we're gonna encourage bad deck building and not run heals because Brandt is really annoying. It's really funny actually. So yeah, so that's basically the main lineup for it. And for the trigger lineups, we're gonna do 8 crit today. Alright, I usually don't do that, guys, you know, I always do the usual 6-6, but we're doing 8. Reason being, like I said, push them as far as you can. You hit them to that 3-4 damage, you can essentially kill them. So like, you know, you're on Brandt, you hit double crit, and then, oh, they hit like a couple heals along the way, they're not healing out of it, you essentially win. So push them as hard as you can. Recommend 8 crit, 8 draw, or 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal. Push them as hard as you can. Alright, that's the main gimmick of it. So yeah, that's the main deck build. I feel like I talked a little bit too much about it because it's really simple of a deck, but like I said, the gimmick of it, push them as hard as you can to 4 or 5, and then you essentially put them in a position where if you hit a heal trigger, you lose, or you can't miracle heal out of me no more. That's why I like it. Now it's pure Vanguard, reverse their psychic abilities, you know. It's really funny. But like I said, at the end we could talk about some little text. You guys could do this grade 3. A lot of people are encouraging me to run this one, the Automata. Reason being, of course it gives them the extra drive trigger check, but that's what really pushes them, because if they hit a heal on that, it's hilarious, because the extra drive check could actually be the heal and then they kill them. I don't know, I personally don't like it. I think I don't like having them add extra cards. I'm unlucky sometimes and they don't hit anything and they just add an extra card to their hand. It's kind of annoying. So you can run 2, 3 of this, it's totally up to you, but I don't run in this. Like I said, I like the deleter aspect. You know, I do Brandt, then deleter to force them and push them even harder, and then re-Brandt them again, and then there you go. That's where they're gonna be in the rest of the game, and they can't heal out of you. They have to sit there and just have to endure that pain. And of course the 3 Guileys, because more on hit pressure, doesn't hurt. So plus 1 more board control. Yeah, as you can see, the deck went away from more board control and went more to a defensive aspect. You could try a bunch of other stuff, guys. That's really the first run of the deck for Brandt for us here. I personally think it's funny. I think it's gimmicky as hell. I just wish the leaders were like in a better spot so I could just run plain the leaders over this, because I don't really like the gimmick, because sometimes they can play around it and just like, oh, they just don't hit any triggers, and you just kind of have to sit there and just kind of like play normal Vanguard. You know, I like to mess with them. So this is the reason why I'm running this right now. So yeah, that goes it for today's deck profile. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead and hit that like and hit that subscribe button. We'll be dropping more Salvation or Logic of Destruction. That is Salvation, Logic of Destruction deck profiles and games for you guys here at the channel. So stay tuned.